Hello, just come in from the sunshine. Waiting for my computer to reinstall some stuff because I'm going to record some music. How about that? Just like the old days. But I thought, well, I've got a bit of time. Read another chapter. 29, I believe. And it is, of course, New Hat. New chapter. Cuddly potato. Or sort of Jack Sparrow style potato. Make of that what you will. Anyway, chapter 29. Much to her annoyance, Betsy couldn't make the things do anything for her. Bo said simply that she didn't need to. That was why it didn't happen. Although it didn't stop Betsy from trying. Every time I went to Bo's house, she spent some portion of the evening holding the last acorn, fists clenched and eyes closed, her cheeks flushed red, trying to make something fly. The weather became colder and colder. The season was changing. As though affected by the weather, Mum seemed greyer too. Like the overcast sky, promising nothing more than a cold wind. She and Tiber spoke a little more now. They'd stopped ignoring each other completely. But there was still a distance between them. Each time they talked, Mum's face became pinched and drained of colour, much like the trees outside, which had shed their leaves, their bare branches growing in sharp angles. Whenever I was outside, I had to be wrapped up in jumpers, coats and scarves and gloves. It's difficult to move being so bundled up. But nothing seemed to keep the cold from whistling down my neck and settling in my bones. The feeling of stiffness, of tightness stayed with me, and I ached even more for the warmth of home, where the sun's rays beat down upon you, urging you to relax, to open up, to slow in its fierce heat. A bit like today. Get outside if you can. It was such a long time since we'd seen Dad. It was the end of summer when we'd first arrived here, but now the days were darker, colder. I couldn't ignore how long it had been. Despite Mum and Dad's protest that he would come home soon, months had passed and still no one knew when it would be. "Stop asking me about your father!" Mum had exploded one day when I questioned her. She stepped away from me and put her hands on the kitchen sink, letting her head drop. She looked like she was trembling. A moment later she turned back to me. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to shout. There's nothing I can do about it. I just wish he was here," I said. "I know," Mum said. "I know. I miss him too. There was so much more I wanted to say. I wanted to ask why I'd come home without him. Why it was taking so long. What was it that Mum could do nothing about? But I didn't want her to yell again. She was like that so often these days. Silent, grey and unspeaking. And then shouting at the top of her voice as if everything was always boiling away just under the surface, ready at any moment to spill over. Although I still missed Dad as much as I had when we first arrived, I realised I didn't have as much time to miss him as I once did. Tiber said we were getting used to him not being there and that it wasn't a good thing. Mum would get upset when she heard Tiber saying that, and Tiber would cock his head to one side and reply, "It's the truth, isn't it?" Mrs. Doyle told me I was doing really well, and though I felt I was improving when I was with her, every time I returned to my class, I wasn't so sure. Mrs. Winters was making us practice for the tests we had to do at the end of the year. We had to sit in silence when we did them, and whenever we did the practice test, everyone seemed very busy writing. They scribbled knowingly, and I came to hate the sound of their pencils scratching away. It was the sound of everyone else knowing what to do, while I felt clueless. I just didn't understand. I was getting better though. My marks began to improve, slowly at first. And then when one day we were taking the test and I realised that I hadn't been listening to the others writing. I'd been too busy working on my answers. After that, the dread I felt of the work lessened, though I still felt shy around my classmates. I didn't know how I could possibly start talking to them after I'd been so quiet all this time. It was different when I was at Bo's with Betsy. Bo was excited by all the wonders I'd been able to find, and Betsy was even trying to teach him to play football. "No magic," she demanded when Bo used one of the walnuts to make the football jump from his foot and dance across the ceiling. It wasn't the best place to play football because there was so much stuff around. But it was good that Betsy could show us something that she was good at, while we were able to show her our powers. Every time Tiber left the house, I'd go over to Bo's. When her father was at working nights, Betsy would come too. I tried not to think how angry Mum would be if she knew that I was sneaking out. I told myself that she would not know anything was different. Tiber went out most evenings. I never saw him come back, and I still had no idea what he was doing on those long, cold nights. One morning, though, I saw him playing around with the phone, But when he noticed me, he sat up and quickly stuffed it under his pillow. He made a great show of picking at one of the stickers that had been welded to the headboard of his bed by a previous owner. He had a sort of detached look on his face that reminded me of the hard concrete buildings that surrounded us. I pretended not to notice anything and delivered the message from Mum that breakfast was ready. I sneaked back when we were all eating, pretending I needed to go to the toilet, and discovered what it was he was hiding from me. He had a brand new phone. Black, shiny, impossibly thin. It was light and cool in my hands. I covered the sleek screen with my fingertips, which I tried to wipe off with my sleeve. I knew it was expensive. I couldn't understand how Tiber could possibly have paid for it. I stuck it back under his pillow, but when I looked for it later, it had gone. I didn't see it again, and no part of me wanted to forget that I had ever seen it. Another part couldn't leave it alone. How had Tiber got hold of her phone like that? Where had it gone now? After I'd found the phone, I thought Tiber looked a bit different. There was something about him that had changed. But I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Mum had taken on more shifts and worked every night now, even over the weekend. When I got to see her, she was so tired after being up all night that I sometimes felt like she was a different person. She was slower at doing things, more tearful. She would get upset over little accidents, like when she knocked over a mug and it smashed on the floor. When I spoke to her, it was like she couldn't hear me properly or wasn't really listening. It made me feel a bit like I had at school, like there was glass or an invisible line between us. I felt more like myself when I was with Bo and Betsy. "Now the walnuts," Bo said to us one evening. It was almost dark by the time I got back from school now. Bo always lit lots and lots of candles instead of using electric lights, and we sat bathed in their warm glow. "The walnuts are from right in the middle, the very, very centre." He talked like this a lot, and we didn't really understand what he meant. Betsy and I looked at each other, confused. "What do you mean?" I asked. "The middle of what?" "Of the place," he said. "What place?" "The one I've been telling you about," Bo laughed. The sound was light, tinkling like a bell. We'd been going round like this in circles for days. Where do you mean?" Betsy asked. The place. His eyes twinkled. "That's where you get the things from?" I asked. Bo nodded. "The things come from the place. They slip up between the crackles and the holes. I collect up everything I can and try to work out whether it is a wonder or not." "Where is this place, Mr. Bo?" Betsy asked again. "It can be close, but it can be far, depending on where you are, of course," he said. Betsy and I both sighed in frustration. Sometimes, just as Bo seemed about to tell us something, he would then veer off in another direction where we couldn't follow. Bo revealed things about the place that made it seem impossible that it could be real. He told us the trees could move, that they used their branches like arms and could pick you up so far off the ground, high above everything else. He told us there were little lights floating in the air around you like dandelion seeds. They followed you about. The more you walked, the more you collected, so you could always find the path you'd taken by the trail of lights behind you. I imagined the lights zigzagging and looping, making a whirling, dazzling scribble. He spoke of a great walnut tree that was at the centre of it all. The most powerful things came from close to the walnut tree, and the further you got from it, the less powerful things were. The place was full of birds, although you could only rarely see them, because they were incredibly shy and hid among the trees out of sight. Bo had only ever seen one there, but he had collected their feathers, of course. Bo had taught me how to look at the things he had collected. I could tell which were more powerful by the way they glowed. It was to do with the brightness of the glow, the feel of its shine. We were getting ready for Bo to try to fly again. He wanted to find a place outside. He thought being closer to trees and nature would help, and so some nights we went out with Dog to try and find the perfect spot. "Where do you want to fly, Mr. Bo?" Betsy asked one day after we'd looked at some trees planted in a circle, which Bo had dismissed because they were too close to the houses. Looking at the buildings that surrounded us, I wondered if we would ever find the right place. I always felt overlooked wherever we were in this city. "Because I want to go home, of course, horse," Bo answered. Where do you come from, Bo? Where's home?" I asked. "I come from a long way away, a journey in a day." "Like us," Betsy exclaimed. "I suppose, but you know the way back to your place, don't you?" Betsy giggled. "Well, our parents know, but maybe, Mr. Bo, there's a more simple way. I go back home to my country on an aeroplane." "Oh, there's no way other than the way I came. At least, I don't think there is. I left it a long time ago and I've been trying to fly home ever since. But I definitely didn't come by aeroplane, Bo replied. Flying is the only way I can get my bones home. And dogs too. Don't forget about Dog. Betsy reached down to rub one of Dog's ears. She looked as though she was pondering something. Will Dog fly too? I asked. Of course, a horse, Bo said. I certainly can't carry him all that way back. He made a humping sort of sound. I'd never get home. Well, Mr. Bo, Betsy said, we have to get you both flying then. That's the end of the chapter. I have no more to say. Enjoy the sun, enjoy the holiday as much as you can. I'll see you again on here maybe soonish with a different hat, as we always do. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, stay curious, stay you, even if you are a potato.